have a great show for you tonight. Our theme tonight is the future of VR gaming. And who else to be able to talk about it than our folks at Schell Games and Survios. So thank you so much for tuning in. So before we get started, as always, we have some housekeeping. If you have any questions about VR in the past, VR today, or VR in the future, please put that in the live chat. Our guests will be able to talk about at length. If there are any VR experiences that you're interested in now or in the future, please also put that in the chat so our team can talk about that. We do have a live chat moderator, Adam or Kuda in our Discord will be manning our live chat. So thank you, Adam, for your work. So if you have any questions or things that might not get into the live stream, he'll be able to answer that as well. And I will be remiss if I forgot the rest of our marketing crew in the back helping us out. Mac, the tech producer for the show. Thank you, Mac, for your hard work. Allison, our post-production coordinator. So thank you. And Jill, our senior director of marketing, who lets us do this every month. So thank you for letting us do that all. So with that being said, there is going to be a question that I will ask these panelists at the very end. And I want you guys to be thinking about it and put it in the chat as well. What do you think the killer app will be for VR? So what will be the killer app? Or is it already here? Is the killer app for VR already here? Let's get a chance to talk about it. Before we do, let's introduce our panelists. So first, we'll go with Jesse.
Oh, hey, I'm Jesse Schell. I'm the CEO at Schell Games.
All right, go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, I'm Shawn Patton. I'm a principal game designer here at Schell Games.
And Alex.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm a CTO at Survios. We've been making VR since about 2013, and excited for this opportunity to chat with you guys about VR.
Good stuff. So before we go into some myth busting, I did have a question that I wanted to pose to you all to just kind of warm you up. So why is virtual reality interesting to you? And I'll start with Jesse because you have quite the history in virtual reality. So why was it interesting to you at the start, and how has it kept you interested?
Yeah, I mean, what's amazing about VR is just its ability to kind of create this illusion that you're in another place. And, that was, I remember back in the 90s, that's what was exciting about it then. And as the technology has improved and gradually gotten better, it's what continues to be exciting now. And when you hear people talk about the metaverse, which is, the hot VR buzzword of the week, that's what they're talking about. This ability to kind of create these virtual spatial places that are connected to ourselves and to actual reality.
Good stuff. And Alex, what have gotten you guys, or what have gotten you interested in, virtual reality to get you to, co-find Survios and get started in that?
So I'll flip that around. Obviously, VR is just insanely exciting as a user to experience and go to other places. But I, as a developer, also just really enjoy making virtual reality content. The moment I started working on motion controls with the Razer Hydra was my very first time, the device that I could find that allowed me to do that kind of fine controls. I just fell in love with it. There's just so many interesting problems to solve in this space, and it's really a game in itself for me that just never ends, and it just keeps getting harder and harder. And there's new challenges getting unlocked all the time whenever new hardware drops in the market. So, I just really enjoy developing in this space.
Good stuff. And I think, Shawn, you can roll right into that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think both Jesse and Alex are spot on, right? There's just exciting challenges, exciting questions. We have worked on a wide variety of things at Schell Games, and it's always new and exciting to try to figure out, okay, well, this project has this constraint, this project has this constraint. But at the end of the day, we are trying to create that immersive environment experience that the person can lose themselves in. So they have that magical moment when they take the headset off or they take whatever off and they're like, oh, I've been here all along, right? And it's like in their heads they were somewhere else, and that's what's so magical about it.
Good stuff. And as always, panelists, if you guys want to riff off each other's responses, please feel free to do so. This is a conversation, so it's all good. Yeah, I really like the point that you guys all brought up about interesting problems or interesting challenges to solve there. We see just the rapid change in technology and virtual reality and just year over year. And so it's really interesting how the studios like Schell Games and Survios are able to try to tackle those challenges and answer those interesting questions. Now, one interesting question or set of interesting questions I have comes with what virtual reality isn't, or what it was, but not necessarily is anymore. And so I want to go into just some myth busting of virtual reality, and we have a couple for you. So let's bring up that first one. The first one is VR is way too disorienting or dizzying to be fun. Does anybody want to tackle that one first?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that. I mean, it's in the old days when people didn't understand about frame rates and tracker lag was so bad, then that was an understandable point of view. But now, with high frame rates, low latency displays, and then sensible design on top of that, because sure, it's totally possible to make VR experiences that are really disorienting and uncomfortable. And some companies choose to do that. But people who want to be successful in the VR space usually take some care to make sure that the experiences can be comfortable. And there are so many experiences out there that are really just fundamentally very comfortable for, I don't know, at least 99% of players. I'm really curious to hear your take on this, Alex. I know you guys did a lot of made some special choices on Lone Echo, for example, trying to make it as comfortable as possible.
Sorry, that's a tiny mistake. We didn't actually work on Lone Echo. I thought that is a great reference.
That's okay. I'm really embarrassed. Okay, so there you go.
It's all good. We did work on a game called Sprint Vector, which I guess you could say had similar mechanics. Yes. Specifically using your hands for locomotion. So I think Lone Echo might have hit the market first or later. I'm not really sure. But
you guys did it right. That's really the point I'm trying to make.
And there's definitely some other games that basically, whenever there's an invention, there's usually someone else who's also really smart who kind of in parallel got to that invention. And there was definitely a lot of developers who were realizing around the same time that using your hands to artificially translate you through the world is definitely the way to go. It's a much more comfortable experience than using the joystick often. And we built Sprint Vector as a racing game around this entire concept. We wanted to push, wanted to see how far we could push into this direction of making a game where you try to travel as fast as possible, but still keep it comfortable. So starting from running, where you kind of emulated a running motion and swung your hands, and that kind of emulated as if your feet were touching the ground and pushing yourself off, and there was momentum there, so that it made it a smooth experience rather than jerky experience. And building from there, we had climbing, just like Lone Echo, but beyond that, we also had not just climbing on static kind of points on the wall. We had these, we called them like grip streams, which essentially were these energy fields that you could grab that also had momentum, and they, I guess, kind of like zip lines of the future. And we also had flying, kind of like Superman, where you could like put your hands in front of you, and then you can actually steer yourself by turning your hands as if they were like a steering wheel, which turned out to be also kind of a nice accidental discovery. But it was surprisingly comfortable because, as probably all of you guys know, rotating the player is one of the most kind of dangerous things you can do in VR. There's translation, and then there's rotation, which is just the thing that tends to make most people barf. And rotating with your hands and kind of tuning it again, just being one-to-one with how fast your hands are moving, ended up making a very comfortable experience. And there's still, I think, a lot of innovation in that space. And at the same time, I think a lot of players do want traditional joystick movement, and I think we're still seeing more and more games kind of adopt that and make that still a comfortable experience.
Shawn, can you talk a little bit about I Expect You to Die and some of the choices there in terms of making things comfortable?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, so Alex, you mentioned accidental finds, and that is like that's happened to us as well, right? Like we the first I Expect You to Die was done with mouse, right? So it was like we found that the sort of the telekinetic element, translating your hand in XY translated to sort of the YZ or whatever your coordinate space is, but and then using the mouse wheel to go in and out, we were able to have a very immersive game that people didn't really think about the interface, even though it was just a mouse. And then, of course, it got even more immersive when touch controllers and hand controllers came out. But yeah, we definitely did the train level on the first I Expect You to Die game. We tried a lot of different speeds and how big the window was, and we eventually sort of settled on, we had a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end where we moved, but for the most part, we were static. But yeah, I think that playtesting with a wide variety of people, we have a special list at Schell Games of people who are motion sensitive, motion sickness sensitive. And we'd like to have them try anything new. I'm actually one of those people. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely, clever design, intentional design. If you're getting sick in VR, you're probably playing bad VR. That's what I'd say.
Very cool. All right, let's move on to myth number 2. That one reads, you need so much room for VR, and I just don't have the space, so I'm not going to get it. What are your thoughts there?
I play a lot of VR games sitting down in my office with a desk in front of me. I mean, I'll push back a little, but yeah, no, I think that a lot of games can be played sitting down. A lot of games are much better if you're standing up, or do require a little more space. But again, clever design, intentional design. There are plenty of games out there that you can play with a small amount of space. And of course, the sort of the wireless, the Quest 2 wireless headsets help that too, because now you can move anywhere in your house, right? So if you do need a little more space, you can probably find a location to do that. So yeah, it's helpful.
Good deal. Think that anybody else want to add before we move on? Or we could just run through these. All right, so you mentioned the Quest 2. That was our myth number 3. VR is way too expensive.
Yeah, I mean that there was a time that was true, that you had to shell out at least $1,000 to get a decent VR system, but we're way past that now. With systems like the Quest, which are basically cost the same as a game console. So like they very intentionally price it at the same prices as a console. So if you feel like an Xbox or a PlayStation's in your price range, that's pretty much where VR is at this point.
Yeah, and the self-contained headsets are so nice because people used to ask me 2016, 2017, 2018, like, hey, what should I get? And it's like, well, you could get the Vive and this and that and pros and cons. You could get the Rift and pros and cons, and then it's like, yeah, like now, you know what? You can get the Quest 2, and it's got good tracking, and it's got its own ecosystem, so you don't need a computer. And there's more and more that are like that are coming out, right? So I think we're going in a great direction.
Yeah, there's a press release today. It seems that they've sold something like 10 million Quests at this point. Was something Qualcomm had come out and said that it appears that that's true, or at very least they've manufactured that many Quests.
Right.
So it's definitely the affordability definitely appears to be here right now. Alex, how are you guys feeling about, like, we'd all started out very PC oriented, and then we all had to kind of make the pivot as we started to see how much traction the Quest was getting. And I know that as a studio, we tend to do things Quest first right now. Are you guys finding the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, our journey was we were building originally, before any VR hardware was on the market. So we're building for kind of custom hardware. And then, then first we had PC headsets like the Vive and Oculus. So we ported to that. And as we started porting to that and releasing raw data in early access, suddenly the PlayStation VR released, and that became really hot. And so then we suddenly had to port the game to PlayStation VR. And that was painful, and we said, okay, we will never port games again, and we'll build them for a certain target platform, because porting is just insanely expensive and painful, and it you end up just breaking the game just to get it to work for one platform, and it affects everyone else. And then so we're like, okay, PlayStation VR as the lead SKU, and then that VR changes really fast. We were doing that, and all of a sudden the Quest happened, and then suddenly we did the exact same thing we said we weren't going to do, which is port games to the Quest, which was with the Creed. Again, it was built for PlayStation VR, and suddenly went to port to Quest, and the Quest 1 was pretty tough to port to.
Yeah, it really was.
It was really impressive, even still, for that you can have a VR experience on your face, but at the same time it's pretty computationally limited. And we do have Quest 2 now, and now we are actually having games that are exclusive to Quest 2, which I think makes sense. A lot of developers tried, I think, banging their head and trying to fit in Quest 1, and they had to make the tough decision. And unfortunately, the first year of early early adopters are starting to get left behind. But the flip side is the content for the mobile platforms is also starting to become leaps and bounds, closer to what you have on the PC space.
Yep.
So yeah, we're definitely. I mean, having a lead SKU is how you do development. You have to target what your kind of minimum is, so that you can make sure that you can actually make a game that fits that. And currently, Quest is it's becoming the biggest kind of market. I do think on the flip side is I think potentially the types of consumers that are on the Quest versus PlayStation, especially the upcoming PlayStation versus PC, are different. So maybe that is also still not the right way to go, depending on what kind of game you're making. I think that's will become more clear in the next few years as the market starts being segmented across different types of users.
Makes sense.
And that's a good point, and I think that kind of goes into the next myth. We only got we're doing total 5, so this is myth number 4. There's not enough content for me to get a VR headset. So it's funny you mentioned that difference between the PC VR and your all-in-one headsets. That there might be difference, but maybe not. But what do you guys think about that?
That's we're way past that. There's so much content right now, and high quality content too. I think. I mean, there's a lot of deep content, and more more content being announced all the time. So I feel like we're way past that.
Agreed. Yeah.
Good stuff. Oh, sorry, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is a myth, and the myths do have a kind of a source of the myth, right? Like, just because someone feels something doesn't mean it's wrong, right? So those feelings are coming from somewhere, and I think that a lot of that comes from discoverability and marketing, right? So there can be as much content as you want, but if consumers don't know about it, don't hear about it, or it doesn't interest them potentially, but that's the less likely part, then of course they're going to feel like that. And I think there's many different causes for why consumers might feel like that. One of them might be that, again, there's not enough marketing for it, and potentially why there's not enough marketing for it is just there's not enough brand recognition. People kind of know these big brand names, these big IPs, and we kind of live in a world in an age of IPs nowadays. And I think that is why we're seeing Oculus, for example, invest into bringing over some of these IPs, like Splinter Cell and Assassin's Creed, like they've announced, right? On the flip side, they're also bringing some old content and porting that up. And that, I think, answers another issue of why some people might just feel like there's just not enough content, is they feel like the content that is there is not high quality, or it doesn't meet the expectation of what like a console game is. And that's just, that's because have been for a while stuck in this circular kind of loop of there's not enough consumers, so we can't really make really $100 million budget games like people expect in the AAA space, and then that causes consumers not to buy the hardware because they don't have that kind of content that they're looking for. And the solve for that has been to bring over some of the non-VR traditional games and basically create a completely new, unique way of experiencing it again in VR. And that's actually something we are also kind of looking at nowadays ourselves, basically realizing that VR market, as fast as it's growing right now, is still not anywhere near as big as the traditional market. So we're kind of looking at evolving towards this concept that we're calling cross reality. I wouldn't say that we can trademark this name. I think other people have used this kind of term. I mean, it's essentially cross-platform, but VR and non-VR, and taking non-VR games and providing a new, unique way to experience that content in VR and take advantage of the motion controllers and the stereoscopic rendering and all the new other hardware that's coming online, and that allows you to kind of de-risk your VR investment and develop really big budget non-VR games that then can be experienced in VR. And I think that's going to help really solve some of these feelings even more, because people will see some of this content that's available and they'll be excited to try it again in VR. Like, they'll immediately have that recognition.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've seen a few games be really successful there, and we're definitely having conversations like that right now with some of the new titles. We're talking about is, do we want to make them VR and non-VR at the same time? It can be a design challenge, but if you get it right, the opportunities pretty huge. I mean, I think Rec Room is a great example. They started out all VR and then realized, okay, let's see if we can bring in consoles and PC, and they've done that with some pretty good success.
Yeah, good stuff. And I think I could have put myth 4 and 5 together of content and variety. So you guys kind of both answered that. So thank you. So we do have a couple questions. Superworm asks, and it goes along the lines of the myths that we were talking about. They ask, how likely do you think it is that other AAA companies will follow Valve's lead and either make headsets or games?
Gosh, I hope they don't make more headsets. I don't know.
It
platform.
It would surprise me. I mean, I think we are going to see some headsets coming at us. I think it's going to be interesting. In 22 and 23, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of weird headsets coming our direction. But at the same time, I mean, I do think as these companies start to see the size of the market, it really just comes down to when the market gets big enough, they're going to come in. They have no reason to rush in. They just need the market to get there. And when we're talking in the realm of 10 million, 20 million headsets, that's the time they're going to start to get interested. So it's just going to start to happen.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's going to come down to, eventually there's going to be 20, 30 million headsets, and it's going to look like an Xbox. I mean, it's going to be more millions than that. But on top of that, we're having, more and more, like I mentioned, investment from just the big the publishers, the platform holders like Oculus and PlayStation. And so Oculus is funding Assassin's Creed. They're funding Splinter Cell, I think I hear. We're going to get more and more of these AAAs, and we've had Medal of Honor, so it's already happening. Like
Resident Evil, yeah.
Right, Resident Evil. So I think we're about to see what PlayStation does once PlayStation releases their next generation of hardware. And Valve, they like to take their time, but once they finally get there, it's a big explosion and a big revolution. So I'm sure we'll see some kind of fallout from then. Hopefully in less than 10 years.
Good stuff. So let's keep answering some of these questions. Gamer Reality asks, what do you guys think about making, this is interesting, we can talk about this a little bit. What do you guys think about making great multiplayer and social experience in VR? Or what would define a new generation in that topic? So not so much a killer app yet, unless you guys think that might be the case, but we could take the question at face value and take it from there.
I mean, I guess I'll put out there, I don't know, raw data. I mean, isn't that one of your more successful games? And it's because of the multiplayer part of it. Do you agree?
I mean, I think there was lots of different. That was just we had the advantage of being really there early because
Yeah.
we've been working in VR for a while. Multiplayer was definitely a part of it. We first had a co-op mode,
Yeah.
and then we did add a PvP mode. It was 5v5, almost like Overwatch kind of style deathmatch, hero based, or it was actually capture the flag kind of mode. And that was, for me personally, actually like one of the highlights of my career. It was the most fun thing to work on. And it was the most fun thing to play for me myself afterwards. I really destroyed the player base for the first like few weeks because I was just so good. I'll be playing with every single character, but it was 5v5 was really hard to sustain. And the co-op mode
Right.
kept living for a while, but the multiplayer, to be honest, specifically the competitive died, and part of that was maybe the demographics. Multiplayer, the types of people who like to play competitive versus co-op are very different types of users,
Yeah.
right? So part of that was demographics, but what kind of people were playing VR at the time. But part of it was how many people were playing VR at all, right? And
You guys were so early, like with that, right? I mean, the progression I know that we've seen is single player to competitive multiplayer to cooperative multiplayer, and cooperative always seems to have to be the last one because it's okay to compete against strangers, but co-op you kind of want to do with friends, and unless you got a bunch of friends who got the same system, it's hard to get that co-op going. So I know we
right.
look at it and say, up till now, co-op has had a real challenge. We've seen some successes in the competitive stuff. A few things on the charts have really had the competitive multiplayer, but I don't know. It feels like in 22 and 23, like we're going to start to see that the social aspects are really going to start to come out.
Right. Yeah, you bring up interesting points of, again, the type of consumers, the type of behavior of people who like to play multiple, like, or want to play co-op versus competitive. Competitive is playing against strangers. Co-op, you need friends. But on the flip side, co-op, depending on game mode, only needs one other person. Versus if you make a 5v5 game, the amount of people you need to sustain the mode is much higher, right?
True.
So that's what we saw. So with Creed, that was probably now at this point our most successful multiplayer game with a multiplayer mode. That one was 1v1 because that's boxing. Boxing, you always only box the other person, and that's both kind of, you can play that with a friend or you can play against a random person. And that was, we were able to sustain that for quite a while because you only need to match up with one other random person. And of course, we also, by the time we released that, we put on the Quest. The Quest user base is just way more active. They also tend to seem to like more active, exercise-like games. So we've been able to, sustain that.
Nice. Yeah, and the other aspect of that question, the social experience. I mean, I think there's apps where you can hang out with friends and play sort of little pickup games, but I think there's also going to be just like, as VR becomes more accessible to even more people, right? Like I could imagine families having their reunions or their get-togethers like in VR, right? So there's probably going to be applications that really make that a thing to do. And like I'm I'm definitely reminded of the days of the Wii when it was like my parents were like, should we buy a Wii so we could like talk to you through games? I was like, okay. Like it's like if my parents who are now in their 80s, if they're like thinking about buying a VR headset, it's like, whoa, what's going on, right? So I think as more families encourage each other to buy, like I took the Quest home, I don't know, 2 Christmases ago. Two sister brother-in-laws bought it afterwards, and so like it's definitely getting to that point, I think. So.
Very cool. So speaking of, we're just gonna go with a lot of these questions. They have some really good ones here. So speaking about people going in and out of virtual reality and reality, there was a question from which is always great. He's in our or they are in our Discord, and it's always great to see the go across the screen. That always makes me laugh. It talks about, do you ever think that there will be a point where VR would be indistinguishable from reality?
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, I think we are going to see a lot of gradual improvement over the years, but I guess I'll say that visually indistinguishable. I'm gonna say yeah, I do think so. I'll say that I bet that 20 years from now we'll probably be in a space where things are visually indistinguishable, and particularly when you talk about where things are going, like we're expecting in the next few years to see blended reality headsets, that are VR and AR at the same time. And so yeah, I think that's definitely coming our way. It's just a Moore's law question. I don't personally, I don't know what would stop that from happening. I mean, we already see it in movies and TV, right? I remember the early days of 3D special effects. It was like, oh, will this ever look real so that you can't tell what's real and what's not? Like, okay, yeah, we're there now with movies. Now it's just a question of rendering it faster.
I almost kind of want to tackle that from a philosophical perspective of do you think we live in a simulation? Because I think once you're able to create really immersive realities that we can't.
I think Alex is clearly a simulation. After that moment, Alex, I don't know if you kind of froze up there and made a noise like a photocopier, which was a little unexpected. So that was
yeah, but yeah,
that was too perfect, is what that was.
Too perfect. But I think until when Alex comes back with his philosophical question, we'll keep answering some of the questions on here. Superworm had another question about general thoughts of the metaverse. So very similar of well, not similar of real life versus virtual reality. It's more of a encompassing of how everything could kind of move together. But you guys, what's your definition of the metaverse, and how do you think virtual reality could be a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, different people mean different things when they say the metaverse. At first, when people are talking about it, I'm like, you mean like in Snow Crash, like in Ready Player One? That doesn't actually make sense, and so I don't see how that's going to work. But now I see that when people are talking about it, they don't mean that literal architectural software model. What they mean is, what most people seem to mean is a blending of the physical world and the virtual world. Seems to be where people are going when they talk about metaverse nowadays. Talking about AR systems that are calibrated to the physical world around us, calibrated, connected to our bodies, and that it becomes easy for us to kind of jump in and out of like multiple virtual worlds. So when you talk about that kind of a blending of spatial reality and virtual reality, when you talk about that as the metaverse, yeah, that's totally that's definitely where things are going. So I think people need to get on the same page about what they mean when they say metaverse. But if we're talking about integrating VR and AR worlds into our everyday lives, yeah, that's definitely a giant trend that we're going to be seeing over the next decade.
Yeah, lowering the barriers or lowering the thresholds between the two, right? That's key to making the metaverse happen. And I think if I can have a pair of glasses or something that is just so easy to use, that I can be in a virtual world and then pop back into the real world and do some things there, and then pop back in the virtual world because some things are better done there. When that becomes so second nature to us as it is now to pull out our phones and check our emails or check our text, that's the metaverse in my mind, I think.
Okay. So, Alex, we were talking about the metaverse and what people's definitions of that is. So, do you have a particular definition of what you think the metaverse is, or what you think it is versus what other people think it might be? Oh, we can't hear you.
Dun, dun, dun.
I hope I don't repeat myself. Sorry, I think the simulation is onto me because I got disconnected the moment I mentioned that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the core pillars of the metaverse is just the connectivity between the different virtual worlds, and being able to carry value across those worlds. Having some persistent ownership of goods, I guess, that you can carry from one world to another. Being able to seamlessly jump from one world to another, ideally with other people. For me, I think that really defines what metaverse is.
Good stuff.
Yeah, Alex. Back to your question of is the universe a simulation? It's a really hard thing to know. And I guess the thing I always contemplate is like, can it be simulations all the way down? I don't feel like it can. I don't know how you feel about that, because even if this universe is a simulation, it's being simulated where? In an actual reality, or is that reality a simulation, which is a simulation, which is a simulation, which is a simulation? And maybe it is. Maybe it's infinite simulations all the way down. I don't know, but that part seems unlikely. It seems, I don't know. It's hard to know. Is there an actual reality or not? Is a difficult question.
I feel like the chances of us being in one of those nested virtual realities is higher than being at the top.
That's a really tough question. The whole nature of reality is an exciting thing to think about. I would think I would honestly think it would there'd be more artifacts. I guess that's how I feel like if it was a simulation. That's my only the only thing I would posit, because we don't find very many.
Well, good stuff. I love going from our philosophical and then back to what we're trying to think about in present, and what we think that virtuality could be. So here's a good one from Gamer Reality. I think this goes to one of the questions that I have for you all. What tips do you have on testing VR games? What tips do you have on testing VR games I'm developing or in development, especially when it comes to multiplayer? So first, I want to talk, and Shawn, you could start out about how you guys started or play tested. I Expect You Die. The first one, was really neat. So could you guys kind of go into how you approached play testing in VR and testing VR games, and then we can open it up to everybody about regular testing VR and then multiplayer.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think thankfully testing VR games is getting easier and easier as the install base gets bigger and bigger. But yeah, certainly back in the I Expect You Die 1 days, like it was a very new thing to the studio, let alone anyone we were testing with. And so we sort of set up these guidelines early on, like you want to make them feel safe and familiarize themselves with the hardware. Like, this is the thing you're going to hold in your hand, this is what we're going to put on your head. You're not going to be able to see when you're in there, but that's okay, we'll be right next to you. Like just sort of making your playtesters feel comfortable is so key, right? Because it's a very vulnerable position when you think about it, right? Like you are in a strange place, probably in a strange piece of hardware with strangers around you, and it's like, you want me to trust you? I'm just gonna, okay, I guess I'm in this, right? And so like sort of making them feel at ease is so important. And then there's of course physical things like having soft surface underneath them, so if they fall out of their chair when they lean on a virtual table, they don't get hurt. There's when they're standing up and moving around, you need to be sure they're cognizant of their surroundings. And it's a very difficult thing to do, and you want to do it well because you don't want to turn them off or get bad data or something like that. And then a multiplayer, of course, makes that all the harder because now you're doing that with multiple people at once. So there are a few services that you can find that will connect you to people who own Quest or Quest 2s or Rifts or whatever. And so we definitely made use of those during the pandemic. That was key to I Expect You Die 2 and some of the other projects we've been working on. Although testing that with multiplayer gets even harder because now you've got potentially people in different time zones, different pings, like that's tough. So you kind of want to still do that locally if you can, but pandemics don't help. Did I mention pandemics don't help testing? It's not It's not the best for many reasons. I don't know. Get a mailing list. That's my recommendation. Get a mailing list and find some Discord server and.
But also, I mean, just concretely, we've made use of usertesting.com.
Yeah.
And they've been very, very useful service. So if you're looking at that, you might consider it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Cool. Any other tips? We could keep moving on. So I think what's interesting about testing VR games, and whether it's single or multiplayer, that you guys are trying to figure out what's fun, what's exciting, what's making people want to play, stay in it. So I kind of want to talk to you guys about what is fun in VR. Like, how do you what movements, what mechanics, what have you guys have seen that people really enjoy in VR? And we could start with Jesse.
Yeah, sure. One of the things we always think about is what is the role of your body in VR? Because that's the big strength of VR, is it creates the illusion that your body is in this place. So we all very often look at what are things that are like that you can do physically that are going to be especially engaging. That's how we got to games like Until You Fall with the sword fighting. It's how we made a lot of the choices in I Expect You to Die, in terms of things that are kind of fun to touch, fun to manipulate, fun to interact, like with your hands. I mean, traditional video games tend to be about just running, just endlessly moving and moving and moving and moving through space. Whereas VR, the fun often comes from actually touching and stopping and interacting with things in some direct physical way. So we often start with that physicality and try and figure out, how to make that fun.
Good deal. And I know, Alex, I'd like to hear your thoughts too, because with your dedication to VR, your experiences, like you talked about Creed, but also I think Puzzle Bobble, I think is really fun. So what have your teams find in making or finding the fun in those VR games that get people coming back and playing?
I think I don't know. Maybe this is not quite answering the question, but I think part of it is also back to some early points, is discovering what is also comfortable. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the user testing actually comes down to you've also mentioned this, getting the least the people who are most susceptible to VR discomfort, and putting them in the headset, and putting those mechanics in front of them and making sure that they don't throw up. Of course, Puzzle Bobble was one of the more comfortable games that we've made, because you're just standing there and using the gun and shooting at things in front of you. So that was actually a completely different challenge, because normally a lot of the games I've done in the past were, the issue wasn't almost finding the fun. The issue was like, how do we make this thing that we know is fun not make our players puke, right? And then with Puzzle Bobble, we were approaching it from a different direction. It was our first game that we wanted to make a more casual experience, and there was obviously existing references of what color match games are in traditional games. So for us, it was, how do we bring VR into this experience? How do we, as Jesse mentioned, how do we use the motion controllers in more kind of interesting ways? And that's when we came up with a concept of, a gun that you physically load, and then you shoot the bubbles by pulling the slingshot, because we know slingshots are fun, just like bows are fun, because we've done bows before. Just generally, how do we make, mechanics that use your hands in intuitive ways, but also at the same time avoid making kind of repetitive actions that players have to do just, for the sake of it, and start to make like gimmicks that make them feel tired. So there's kind of this balance of, creating these mechanics where the player feels like they're making, actions that make sense, but also aren't just, wasting their time just for the sake of just moving your hands around.
Now, in all of your experiences, have you have any interesting stories or special moments when people are testing VR or in your, whether it's in the studio or looking at user testing, or your employees, they put on something and they do something in a different way, like, oh no, that's really cool. I'm sure you guys have some cool anecdotes about people finding fun in VR that you either expected or didn't expect.
Yeah, I think the for me the magical moment is always when they think something's there in the real world that's not, because they're so immersed, right? So they'll try to put something down on a fake table, or they'll try to touch the material of the inside of a vehicle, or like, those moments where they'll smell something that they're and they're like, wait, what? I can't smell that. And then like, it's just those are sort of I look for those moments when I'm playtesting, because that means that they're immersed enough to, the game is working smoothly enough that they can have those moments. That's a great sign.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Those moments are really fun, where you realize that, oh no, they kind of forgot what they were doing. I mean, sometimes those moments are a little painful, like somebody swinging a sword and like, smacking something in the room. I had a funny one. We were working on a game that like had some hot liquid in it, and in the game I like reached out to pick it up, and I accidentally stuck my actual hand into a cup of coffee, and I was like, what is happening? I was so confused for a minute because I thought I was getting tactile experience, but it was just a happy coincidence. But the other one I like is when people try and do something in the game they think won't work. They're trying to find that boundary of the game where they're like, oh, surely the game won't let me do this, and it could be something like, I don't know, like we have a moment in I Expect You to Die too. Like if you put the bowl on your head, it'll lock onto your head. And there's sometimes somebody, where I watch somebody do that and they're like, can I put this on like a hat? And like, oh, okay, I can. And like, then they don't expect that. I love those moments. And those are in there because we look for them. We look in the playtest. What are people trying to do? When we see somebody trying to do it, we're like, if we can support it, let's support it, because that's people. I don't know. It's kind of like building up trust with your players. If you kind of support the things that they want to do, it makes them believe in the game a lot more.
Go ahead, Alex. Any interesting? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think for us, I think the one game that I feel like there were a lot of discoveries that were unplanned were from Sprint Vector, since it was a game that was focused on kind of speed running through these levels, and first a QA and got really, really good at the game, because we did races at the office and QA always destroyed everyone in the cups. But then we released the game out in the public and people started recording their runs, especially through the challenge levels. And it was interesting to see. It was really exciting for me personally to be part of a game that we developed that had enough depth where people started figuring out kind of like different techniques that we didn't originally plan for, almost like exploiting just the way the movement was simulated, and came up with like almost this kind of like bunny hopping kind of technique where you would jump and slam yourself into the ground at the correct times, or jump right as you would be coming off slopes, and essentially exploiting code that maybe I didn't quite correctly write or left for these exploits, and they were they ended up speeding themselves up and beating the competition. So for me that was really fun to see and to be part of.
Yeah, it's definitely when your player base starts doing things that you didn't expect. That's always an awesome moment as well. I think, we Francisco and Charlie, Charlie was the project director and Francisco design director on I Expect That Too. They did a thing recently where they watched speed runs of I Expect That Too.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, how did he just? Why is he doing that? Is that? Oh, does that cancel out there? And it's just like you see these people, the players here, they love the game so much, right, that they've played it and figured out these things, and that's that's really special because it means they like the game enough to figure out these cool things, and your mind is blown when that happens. It's really fun.
Yeah, so the video that Shawn is talking about, it's the IGN devs react. So Adam, if you could put that in the live chat so people can take a look at that later, that would be awesome. Cool. So we're getting to towards the last 10, 12 minutes. And so I want to take a couple questions, and then we're going to talk about the future of VR and then what these lovely folks think. So we had an interesting question from Gamer Reality. So what do you think of the future of free-to-play games and the similarity between lightweight mobile games appearing on platforms like the Quest?
I mean, I think free-to-play games becoming an important part of VR it's inevitable. I mean, we've seen free-to-play has shown up on every other platform, but the thing about free-to-play, it doesn't work until you have millions and millions of players. So it doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but it's going to be making sense soon. So I would expect we're going to see it gradually come onto the scene.
Cool. And then there was an interesting question. Let's see, from Warren, specifically to Alex about the Walking Dead onslaught. And he asked if Alex could dissect the red mist horde mechanic in Walking Dead onslaught. Was the idea to raise tension, force movement, or something else?
Yeah, I mean, that was a kind of combination of different things coming together. We wanted to create a the Walking Dead truthfully kind of went through a lot of evolution and iteration, and that the onslaught mode just had many different kind of pivots almost, where we kind of we're trying to make a mode that would make you feel like you're running through an episode of Walking Dead where you're trying to collect resources as fast as possible to get away from the horde. It started off as a more kind of free-flowing experience. We're in a bigger map, but that had issues with just making it feel like the player just was aimlessly wandering through a big environment. So through evolution, we realized we wanted to create this feeling of like pushing the player forward, making it almost feel like a race, maybe somewhat like how some of the Left 4 Dead races, Left 4 Dead maps feel, where you're really racing towards the finish line. But at the same time, trying to scavenge for resources and balancing, should I enter this house at the risk of the horde catching up to me, versus, keep going and not, have such a high score. The wall was really a combination of us wanting to do that. Obviously, things like Fortnite and like, all these different battle royales being really popular with, zones being closed in and kind of pushing the player forward. And at the same time, just us having to deal with the limitations of the hardware because, the game came out on PlayStation VR and we couldn't, we were already at, with this game on the PlayStation VR, I think we ended up lowering our initial target of 50 zombies on screen to 30 or something, and we needed the 30 zombies for the actual combat, so we couldn't afford even more zombies that were just kind of aimlessly falling behind you as a horde. So in the end, that just came out to be kind of like an artistic basically an artistic solution to that, with a more gamey kind of a wall that was creeping in through the level as fog.
Good deal. All right, so now we're going to talk about some exciting VR technologies, and I think we're sticking with Warren here. Curious of which fringe mobile VR add-ons you're most excited to see in the next generation, or standards like face tracking, eye tracking, electromyography, brain sensors, etc.
I know. I think face tracking and eye tracking are going to be important as we move into more social experiences, because we'll be able to get our facial expressions on our avatars in multiplayer. I think that's going to be a big deal. But I also think an underestimated technology is foot tracking, mainly so that you can kind of have various kinds of kicking in games. I think interacting with your feet for dance games, for fighting games, I think is going to be something really fun and won't be that hard to do. So I think I would say, yeah, face tracking and foot tracking are things I think about.
Cool. Let's see. We have another one. here talking about future stuff. Do you guys think that flat screen games like Batman Arkham will come to VR?
Am I wrong? Isn't there already a Batman VR game on PlayStation?
I believe so. I think it came out with I Expect You Die 1, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'll just look real quick.
It was more of a, it wasn't truthfully a full faithful recreation of the Batman Arkham experience,
Okay.
where you're running around. It was not a beat 'em up, for example, right? Like you were
Right. No, but I mean, I'm just saying Batman Arkham VR is already out, but yeah, no, it's not exactly the same, but yeah, the games will get bigger and more elaborate over time, without a doubt.
Cool. So, what other future advancements in VR are you interested in exploring? So you talked about the feed. How about just losing controllers? So just with your hand, so your hand tracking either gloves or some other peripheral, or just with the hands. What do you guys think about that?
I know I'm pretty cold on that. I think a lot of people think, oh, that'll be more natural, but honestly, not getting any tactile feedback at all feels a lot less natural. It's part of the reason that Kinect flopped out so bad was because the idea, oh, you're gonna have empty hands. Well, where's your fire button? Like, how does that work, right? And so I continue to believe that hand controllers are going to be a really important solution. The thing that I think is going to be a really big deal is the blended VR AR, the video pass through that's going to start to happen on VR headsets. I think will be the biggest, absolutely the biggest trend in the next 2 years. Is that being able to use your VR headset as an AR headset? I think that's going to be huge.
Anybody else excited? Okay, go ahead.
I definitely think maybe hand tracking doesn't make sense for all games out there. Things that require really high precision inputs. High responsiveness. But at the same time, let's just look at touchscreen games, and that's definitely not the best form of input, but it's also probably the most popular form of input of all games. Because if we count casual games, then there are more casual games out there than any other games, right? And it's people like convenient things. People avoid friction and just being able to quickly put on a headset and interact with things. That's going to bring in more players, especially players who are maybe not as comfortable with traditional controls. The more casual crowd, and I think puzzle-like games, or who knows what the innovation that will come from just using your hands in interesting ways. I think we'll see massive adoption on that, especially maybe in more casual experiences, more casual social experiences.
Interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. Any other? So I put some of the off the wall things in our notes. Either whether it's haptic vests. I went to I think a GDC when somebody was experimenting with virtual reality skates. VR smell-o-vision. So adding that olfactory, kind of senses to VR. Is there anything in particular there that you are either interested in seeing, or I think it's like, people could talk about it, but I don't think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, those systems are available. They're just like the smell. There's a few different smell-based VR companies, and they just the technology is kind of expensive and hard to maintain. So yeah, I'm skeptical that we're going to see any kind of smell vision in the near term. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see it in some kind of theme park experiences, some of that museum experiences possibly, but for the home, it's hard, it's messy, it's expensive.
All right. Well, we have reached the time for our last question. So the last question, as we stated at the beginning, is what do you think will be the killer app for VR? And let's start with Shawn. I'll put Shawn on the spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a topic that's been touched on a couple times tonight is the multiplayer or social aspect. And I do think that the killer app in VR will be a social one in some degree, whether it's allowing you to play games with your friends or to seamlessly transition from hanging out with your friends to playing a game with a subset of them, or just saying hi to your family, or like, I think that, again, lowering that threshold, lowering the friction, as Alex said, making it so that VR, I guess, yeah, on the tech side, it's lowering the friction, and then on the software side, it's making the social app that you can spend time in, and it makes sense, and it feels good, and it becomes a part of your daily life, right? I think that's the key to a killer app, is it's so useful, or it's so ubiquitous that you can't imagine your life without it, right? So I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it's going to be social, pretty sure.
Okay, so Shawn, is going to be something social. What about you, Alex? What do you think? Killer app in VR.
I'm not sure we like live in a world of killer apps anymore, to be honest. Maybe I'm just trying to avoid the question. But I mean, when we say killer app, in my mind, I think of like Halo, because that was the killer app for Xbox for a while. It was the leading game. It's probably still like the face of that IP. I mean, Sonic was probably the killer app of, Sega. But as games become more and more diverse, it's hard to really point to a specific app. Like, does Sony have a killer app? I mean, they have like so many different IPs that maybe people buy their games for, but it's really, I think, I mean, they have really a collection of studios that pumps out killer apps. And I think, Oculus needs to do the same to really appease to, different play styles, different types of consumers.
Yeah, and I guess I would take a broader view on the question. I mean, in that when VR first started to appear 5 years ago, there was a lot of talk of, oh, it's for all kinds of things. It's for movies, and it's for productivity, and it's for the office, and it's for games. And I'm like, nope, games. This VR's killer app is games. It can do other things, but the thing that's going to make people buy it is going to be the games. Games are going to drive the future of VR for the next 10 years. Is that I'll argue that.
Okay. Well, cool, guys. Shawn, Jesse, Alex, thank you guys, so much for coming on the live chat or the live stream. A lot of good knowledge there, so I appreciate your time, especially Alex. You are traveling, so thank you for staying up a little bit later and hanging out with us. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Schell Games channel. Make sure that you enable your notifications, that you're able to see when we're coming on. You feel free to follow us on Twitter as well. Twitter, Facebook, all the things. We're Schell Games everywhere, so make sure that you do that. All of Survios' information is in the description of the video, so hit the read more and make sure that you follow Survios and everything that they're doing as well. It's always fun seeing Survios and their games and the trade shows and events that we go to, so it is fun running into your teams. So thank you again for joining us, and don't forget next month in December, we're not doing the last Wednesday of the month again. We're going to do in the second week of December, which I believe is the December 15th. Adam, you could bail me out if that's the guy. I think it's the second Wednesday.
That's the third Wednesday, Dwayne.
Third Wednesday. Thank you. Third Wednesday, not the fourth. So thank you. As always, team helps bail me out of stuff whenever I don't remember things. But the theme for next month is going to be community management in games. How do you build a community? How do you maintain a community? And how do you make sure that the studio or the game continues to entertain and retain the community? So we're looking forward to talk to people on that stream, and we hope you tune in. So take care. Have a good night.